Welcome to another episode of Ask Daily Stoic. You ask your questions, we answer them. You send them in at info@dailystoic.com. How does a Stoic deal with aggressive people? How should we respond to sort of bad, evil, mean, unpleasant people? I don't think the Stoics had any illusions about their fellow man. Marcus Aurelius talks about, he opens Book 2 of Meditations with sort of a meditation on how awful some of the people he's going to meet today. But later in the books, he talks about how, look, there are going to be people who gouge and bite you in the ring, who cheat. And you can choose to be upset by this, you could choose to be frustrated by this, or you could understand that that's like kind of a certain type of person in the world, and that you have to keep your guard up around them, you have to adjust your fight strategy accordingly, but you can't let it get to you, and you certainly can't let it make you quit. Marcus Aurelius led the Roman army in war. Marcus Aurelius would have sentenced people to death. He would have adjudicated very complicated, unpleasant legal cases with examples of humanity doing awful things to each other. So there's a sort of pragmatism and a realism in Stoicism, in a sense that what has to be done has to be done. Marcus Aurelius talks about wrestling and fighting and boxing. I don't think he just meant in the sort of confines of the ring. It's like, look, sometimes violence is necessary. We worked on this book at Brass Check a couple years ago. This guy named Tim Larkin, and he said, and I'm getting a little bit away from your question, but I think it's worth pursuing, because the Stoics were not utopians. They did not believe that everyone was good and that everyone would be nice. Tim Larkin's great line, he says, violence is rarely the answer, but when it is the answer, it's the only answer. And I think that kind of encapsulates the Stoic approach, which is that you try to be good, you try to give people the benefit of the doubt, you try to do the right thing always, but sometimes shit gets real, and sometimes that is required. Thankfully we live in a society today where we don't have a volunteer army, we have a volunteer army rather than a general citizens army. And so people have taken it upon themselves to sort of do those things for us. We have police, authorities, government agencies that sort of step in between us and some of the things that, in earlier times we would have had to handle ourselves. But I guess my answer to this question in a sort of long, windy way is that you deal with aggressive people as they are required to be dealt with. You always try to comport yourself with the standards that you believe in. You try to do the right thing. And then, sometimes you got to do more than that. Jeremiah's question is if I had any suggestions for applying Stoicism to learning a foreign language, that he wants to learn Japanese to speak with his children, and he has motivations, but he doesn't enjoy the process of learning. It's very boring, difficult, and how can I use Stoicism to overcome this? First off, good for you. I think this is a great question. I think you're wonderful for trying to do what you're doing. I am not good at languages. I speak mediocre Spanish, but I have liked using Duolingo. I'm actually using Duolingo right now to try to learn some Latin, something I thought would sort of improve my game as a writer and a thinker this year if I could be closer to understanding some of the languages that right now I only sort of hear about and experience secondhand. I found the sort of gamification of the app to be fun and beneficial. So I might just look at sort of different people who have experimented with different strategies for learning. Just, I guess, sometimes people go as an example, we found with books, it's like, I love books. Books come easy to me. I think reading is easy. I love the smell and the touch and the feel of a book. But what we realized is that not everyone feels the same way. That's why we do this podcast. That's why we make the YouTube videos. That's why we have the Instagram account. And so sometimes we can assume that things should only be done a certain way. We're just supposed to grit our teeth and sort of white knuckle through a difficult process. Maybe there's different learning methodologies that you should check out. Maybe it's Duolingo, maybe it's hiring a tutor, maybe it's taking classes, maybe it's spending time in Japan. I don't know what it is, but experiment, try, put yourself out there, take some risks. Don't just think that sheer effort is the only way to get through this. The Stoics were big on tutors. Obviously, I think each one of the Stoics, the famous Stoics, has a pretty well-known tutor. And so maybe thinking about, investing in someone to guide you through this process. Who's your master? Who's your instructor? Just doing it alone might be where you're struggling. And then the last thing I would think about is don't just think about that you're learning a language. Think about how you're learning to teach yourself new things, how you're learning to be a better father, how you're learning to be a better person, that you also sort of give yourself credit for the process that you're going through. And that, it's supposed to be hard, but that's because you're learning two skills at the same time. You're learning to speak Japanese, but you're also learning how to learn Japanese, which for you may actually be the harder thing. So that's just maybe an interesting way to think about it.
Hey everyone, today's podcast sponsor is Go Macro, a mother-daughter owned maker of vegan protein bars. Go Macro has some exciting news for fans this month. They are releasing a brand new delicious flavor, double chocolate peanut butter chips. It's protein-rich peanuts, fair trade vegan chocolate, creamy organic peanut butter, and their very own in-house made peanut butter chips, and of course, delicious chocolate chips. As you know, I travel a bunch, usually on the road for talks and writing projects, and so I throw these in my bag wherever I go. I am a big fan of the Go Macro bars. You know, when you travel, you're always tempted to take the path of least resistance, so I carry these with me so I don't eat crappy airport food. I don't eat fast food. I love them. They come in 16 great flavors, packed with nutrients, perfect for refueling after a workout or when you're stuck in your car in traffic. Go Macro bars also fit in with all sorts of diets and food restrictions, including vegan, kosher, organic, gluten-free, non-GMO, raw, soy-free, and more. They even have protein bars that are nut-free. Go Macro is owned by a mother-daughter team. They're based in a rural community like me. So when you buy Go Macro bars, not only can you feel good because you're eating well, but you get the satisfaction of helping a small community and a family-owned business, not some anonymous evil corporate brand. I think Go Macro bars are great. I highly recommend that you try them, especially their new delicious flavor, double chocolate peanut butter chips. You can get started today. Just check out at www.gomacro.com. Use the promo code STOIC for 30% off plus free shipping for a limited time. That's www.gomacro.com, promo code STOIC.
Prane is asking, what kind of meditation can one practice in order to become more calm and resilient? Can you elaborate on the role of meditation and mindfulness? So you might think, as someone who wrote a book called Stillness is the Key, that I'm a big meditator. I'm not. I struggle with it. It doesn't really do that much for me. For me, meditation and mindfulness comes best when I run, when I swim, when I walk, when I do active things. So that's the kind of meditation that I practice. Occasionally I'll do some sort of breath exercises, or I'll count my breath. I like to do it sets of 30. I count 1, 2, 3, up to 30. I start over and over again. Sometimes I'll do that like when I'm in a steam room or a sauna. It feels very sort of Greek and Roman to me. This is, we know the Stoics spend a lot of time in these baths. I would just experiment with the different apps. Calm.com is great. There's different apps that you can try and work with. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. There's other ways to do it. I would just think about the Stoics and that they never use the word meditations. When Marcus Aurelius calls his book Meditations, or that's the name, he wasn't thinking about meditation in our context. He was thinking about a conversation with himself. So journaling is that form of meditation for Marcus Aurelius, it seems. Seneca talks about his nightly review. Cato seemed to have these kind of long, flowing conversations in dinner parties. Other Stoics spent time alone reading or time hunting or doing lots of different things. I'm always reluctant to say meditation is this one thing, you should do it this way. I don't think that's the Stoic tradition, and so I'm just reluctant to fit you in that box if it's not working for you. Another question we have here is how to properly apologize for mistakes. He says, how do I properly apologize for mistakes I have committed and the wrongdoings that had an impact on a person's life, which were committed either intentionally or unintentionally before I was introduced to Stoicism? This seems pretty straightforward to me. You apologize, you mean it sincerely, you actually take some time to think about how this affected another person. You don't think about how it affected you, you don't think about why you did it, you think about how it affected that other person, how that must have felt to be them, and you apologize and you address that and you mean it. And then you have to understand that all you can do is offer the apology. You can't make them accept it. You can't make them forgive you. And it's not fair for you to demand or expect those things. All you can do is give a heartfelt expression of your feelings, give them a commitment of how you want to do better in the future, the path that you're on, what's been learned from this process, and hope that they accept it and ultimately give them the space to accept it. That's really all that you can do. Hey everyone, we've talked a bunch here before about the tie between philosophy and exercise, the importance of the training aspect of Stoicism. That's why I work out every day, either running or swimming or going to the gym. And so our sponsor this week is a great app called Future, which pairs you with a world-class trainer through the app that pairs workouts for your schedule, your life, the level of fitness that you're in. It even pairs with your Apple Watch. You've probably seen the Apple Watch I've posted on Instagram before with my workouts. If you don't have an Apple Watch, they'll even send you one for free. You can try Future today at tryfuture.com/stoic for a 2-week trial for just $1. It's great. My wife Samantha is actually using it right now. Doesn't matter your schedule, doesn't matter what's going on. They'll pair a great workout for you. World-class trainers. It should be awesome. Check it out. Tryfuture.com/stoic. And thanks to them for sponsoring Ask Daily Stoic. Today's reading is a little passage from The Obstacle is the Way. It's actually from the Discipline of the Action section, one of my favorite chapters. This is on Amelia Earhart. It's about getting up and getting moving and getting started. Amelia Earhart wanted to be a great aviator, but it was the 1920s, and people still thought that women were frail and weak and didn't have the stuff. Women's suffrage was not even a decade old. She couldn't make her living as a pilot, so she took a job as a social worker. Then one day the phone rang. The man on the line had a pretty offensive proposition along the lines of, "We have someone willing to fund the first female transatlantic flight. Our first choice is already backed out. You won't actually get to fly the plane, and we're going to send 2 men along as chaperones, and guess what? We'll pay them a lot of money and you won't get anything. Oh, and you might very well die doing it." Do you know what she said to that offer? She said yes, because that's what people who defy the odds do. That's how people who become great at things, whether it's flying or blowing through gender stereotypes, do. They start anywhere, anyhow. They don't care if the conditions are perfect or if they're being slighted, because they know that once they get started, if they can just get some momentum, they can make it work. And that's how it went for Amelia Earhart. Less than 5 years later, she was the first woman to fly solo nonstop across the Atlantic and became rightly one of the most famous and respected people in the world. But none of that would have happened had she turned up her nose at that offensive offer or sat around feeling sorry for herself. None of it could have happened if she'd stopped after that first accomplishment either. What mattered was that she took the opening and pressed ahead. That was the reason for her success. Life can be frustrating. Oftentimes we know what our problems are. We may even know what to do about them. But we fear that taking action is too risky, that we don't have the experience, or that's not how we pictured it, or because it's too expensive, because it's too soon, because we think something better might come along, because it might not work. And you know what happens as a result? Nothing. We do nothing. Tell yourself that the time for that has passed. The wind is rising. The bell's been rung. Get started, get moving. We often assume that the world moves at our leisure. We delay when we should initiate. We jog when we should be running, or better yet, sprinting. And then we're shocked when nothing big ever happens, when opportunities never show up, when new obstacles begin to pile up, or the enemies finally get their act together. Of course they did. We gave them room to breathe. We gave them a chance. So the first step is to take the bat off your shoulder and give it a swing. You've got to start to go anywhere. For some reason these days we tend to downplay the importance of aggression, of taking risks, of barreling forward, of compromise. It's probably because it's been negatively associated with certain notions of violence or masculinity, but of course Earhart shows that that isn't true. In fact, on the side of her plane, she painted the words, "Always think with your stick forward." That is, you can't ever let up your flying speed. If you do, you crash. Be deliberate, of course, but you always need to be moving forward. You can listen to the audiobook of The Obstacle is the Way. It's available on Amazon. Tim Ferriss was actually nice enough to be the one who published it. I did the reading, but it is a great book if you want to check it out. What I think is always interesting about this passage is I tell us this version of the story in a lot of the talks that I give. And I remember I was giving a talk in San Francisco at a tech startup, and I told the story of Amelia Earhart, and afterwards I was on Twitter, which I shouldn't have been, but I saw this woman who'd been in the audience got very, very upset that I told this story. She had somehow taken the message from this story that women should just take what's offered to them, that this was somehow a story about settling, which to me it's the exact opposite of it. And I think sort of it's kind of emblematic of the exact mentality that I was trying to attack in the thing that I think Amelia Earhart so wonderfully embodies, which is that you can't make progress if you don't get started, if you wait for the perfect opportunity, if you wait to be treated fairly. You have to take what you want in this life. You have to take what's yours. And we are indebted to people like Amelia Earhart, to people who have that sort of stoic ability to endure slights and disrespect the way that Jackie Robinson did, the way that Amelia Earhart did, and are willing to take an inch, turn it into a mile, and prove just how wrong the vast majority of people have been. And that requires, I think, what the message of that section of the book is about, which is about taking action, doing the work, getting momentum, and then, as Amelia Earhart said, always thinking with your stick forward. That means progress, not perfection. So get out there, get moving. Hey, thanks for watching Daily Stoic. If you want to learn more about Stoicism, you can check out some of our other videos here. Subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Keep learning, keep studying, and remember those 4 Stoic virtues: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom.